The Grand Slam Track League went from having $30 million in January of 2025 to being $40.68 million in debt by December of the very same year, having only generated $1.8 million in revenue. A total disaster. Captained by 400-meter legend Michael Johnson, this fiasco set the sport of track and field back years. If any investor wants to invest in track and field now, they're going to look at Grand Slam and say, well, it didn't work out too well for them, now did it? And think twice before putting a dime into our sport. But what if I told you it didn't have to be this way? And that instead of Michael Johnson becoming the pariah of our sport, he could have been the savior he desperately wanted to be, and the savior our sport desperately needs. Michael Johnson should have made Grand Slam the new World Championships, directly competing against World Athletics. Things would have been totally different. Michael Johnson had one assumption that absolutely ruined his track league from the get-go, and that problem was that track and field has a supply problem, meaning once the supply of track's biggest superstars are put on the starting line to compete against each other, the sleeping demand will awaken. Money will start pouring into our sport. But that's not how it worked out. And in all fairness, he did bring some of our biggest superstars together. We had some of the biggest names in our sport show up and compete. Sydney McLaughlin, Gabby Thomas, Josh Kerr, Marco Arop, Grant Fisher, and more. What Michael Johnson didn't know is that nobody cares. That's how you could summarize it. Nobody wanted to pay to watch a made-up track league. When Johnson started Grand Slam, he was being advised by people from a company called Winners Alliance. Winners Alliance gave the seed investment for Grand Slam for around $30 million. Now, the difference between tennis and track was one of the errors that Michael Johnson didn't realize. Tennis is a professional sport. Grand Slam tennis, you have superstars. You have people getting paid tens of millions of dollars a year. Track is an amateur sport. How you run a track business and how you run a tennis business is just totally different. And what Winners Alliance was advising Michael Johnson, in my opinion, was just terrible advice. Winners Alliance was just unqualified to advise Michael Johnson in how to make a professional sports league out of an amateur sport. And it really showed really quickly. There's a reason why World Championships and the Olympics does so well. And the reason is, it's like a heavyweight boxing match in every single event. It's best on best. It's whoever wins is the best in the world. You can see the fastest times of all time, or the farthest jumps of all time, or just fantastic races and competitions. And that's something Grand Slam really missed. Yeah, there was some occasional fast times, but the stakes write themselves at the Olympics. You see a fast race in the semifinals, and like the 1500 meter in Tokyo in 2021, when the Olympic record was set in the semifinals and again in the finals, but in between those two races, that's a storyline. But you can't make those up. Grand Slam, if you remember, there was a bunch of marketing really forcing these athletes to talk almost trash about each other in these press conferences. And when the race went off, yes, there were amazing races, some of them for track fans, but it really didn't attract anyone outside of the realm of track. But as much as these rivalries between athletes felt inauthentic, that wasn't the reason why Grand Slam fell. It was a series of very terrible business decisions that was the main culprit of its downfall. You can see the whole history of Grand Slam from its inception to its bankruptcy in December 2025 right here. I covered that in this video. But do you know why Grand Slam failed? Well, leagues like the Diamond League are super successful. Well, first off, the Diamond League is held in first world countries like Europe. You have first world money going into those meets, and therefore you can have a first world experience for the athletes. You can pay them not a lot of money, but you can give them some money. Grand Slam's initial investment of $30 million was first world money, yet they opened their track meet in Jamaica. Jamaica's annual GDP per capita is around $7,000. It wasn't a good decision to make. You have to host your meets in profitable places where there's enough margin where you can pay people and where you can be profitable yourself. And secondly, the reason why the Diamond League is so successful is track is an amateur sport. That means athletes pay to compete or are compensated very little for their efforts. The Diamond League knows this. They incorporate that into their business model. They know that they don't have to pay an athlete that much money to get them to show up. And then they don't pay them that much money or any money at all. Because if track and field was an actual professional sport, Diamond League's business model wouldn't work. And that's just the reality of our sport. There is no organization that can pay every single world-class athlete a livable wage, or a livable wage that you can compete in the sport with dignity, so to speak. And the third reason why the Diamond League League does so well is they also leverage something called the World Ranking System. I talked about the World Ranking System excessively in these 3 videos right here, but basically, in order to qualify for World Championships or the Olympics, which World Athletics owns and World Athletics controls the process to, you have to get a certain amount of points to qualify for those 2 teams. And a big part of those points is which category of track meets you go to. And who gets to decide those category track meets, which highly influences the amount of points you get, is World Athletics. And World Athletics is a partial owner and partner of the Diamond League. So you see the conflict of interest here. That's the gist of it. So by doing this, you can further leverage paying your athletes paltry wages. Because if an athlete wants to make World Championships or the Olympics, they have to compete in your meets or meets sanctioned by World Athletics with a higher category tier. So World Athletics comes on top in every way possible. And that's what makes Diamond League so profitable and the best and only game in town when it comes to track leagues. It's a business and they do it very well. World Athletics is overstepping its boundaries with this new World Rankings point system. Here is where Grand Slam had a massive opportunity. Track athletes have the onus of funding their own existence in track and field. They pay to participate, like I said, and you can't get around that. But what this new world ranking system and its rollout over the next few years is doing is it's forcing athletes to pay more so they can go and travel and compete at the meets with the highest tier so they can get the most amount of points possible. Because if they don't do so, they're not going to make the national team because somebody else in their country is going to spend that money and compete. This is just a step too far. Athletes just don't have that kind of money. You can't travel on average 500 miles per meet 5 times per year or even more and compete at your best ability and go home and be like, oh, I'm financially secure. You just can't do that. So because this responsibility to compete in foreign places or places really far away falls on the athlete yet again, they're getting kind of tired of it. They're more likely to look at alternatives. A, they're more likely to retire, but if something came up that's as big as World Championships, or almost as big, they would be more likely to go to that in order to keep competing if it's easier and spends less money doing so, and they spend less money doing so. So why not have World Championships yourself? And why not have it in America, at least for the first few years until your meet takes off? Grand Slam has 3 major advantages. 1, they have $30 million. Well, they actually only had $12 million and $18 million in financial commitments, but let's just say it's $30 million for the sake of argument. We'll get into the $18 million of conditional money later. 2 is Grand Slam World Championships would be starting fresh. They don't have the bloated infrastructure of World Athletics. World Athletics had $79 million in expenditures in 2024 and around $99 million in revenue. You don't have to touch that $79 million to have World Championships. $30 million is more than enough. A lot of the money that World Athletics spends, you just don't have to spend it. You have existing infrastructure everywhere. You don't have to do everything that World Athletics does. You can control where your money goes to have the biggest bang for your buck, to have the most productivity. You just need really smart people to know where that money should go. Grand Slam should have leveraged all of the track meets around the world. They should have had a structure for their World Championships where if you have a certain fast time or a certain average of fast times, so let's say you run the 100 meter and you say to qualify for our World Championships, you have to have the average 5 fastest times in your country. And if you do, you get to come. You can separate yourself from World Athletics right away. You can call yourself the most pure World Championships. You don't have to put limits on how many people from each country go. You can just bring the fastest people who are willing to come. So in America, for the 100 meter, you can have half of the qualifying athletes from America. You can have half of the qualifying 10,000 meter athletes from Kenya, as long as they're the best in the world. And all of the money you spend should just be on your World Championship meet. You don't have to do any of the other fancy stuff, no development camps, no nothing. And you don't require these meets around the world to pay you money in order to have a tier for your track meet, like World Athletics does. You make it less burdensome for everybody to participate, so they're more willing to. And there are so many world-class facilities in America that can host these World Championships and that can host all of these local track meets, even if Grand Slam wants to get somehow involved, that you can leverage the existing infrastructure to just have your own World Championships. But the most important advantage that Grand Slam has is that they can pay their athletes. The World Championships and the Olympics do not pay their athletes. They monetize every possible angle an athlete can make money, and they take it from them. They keep it for themselves. If you put $10 million of your $30 million to the side and say, this $10 million is going to go to the prize pool to everybody who wins our world championships, here is the prize structure that you can have for 43 events in track and field. We're going to eliminate events like the marathon and all the road races, as we're going to keep it track and field specific. It's too expensive to do otherwise. You can have the winners of your meets make $75,000 and 8th place make $13,000. And I'm telling you right now, it would be like a vacuum out of world championships if you had those two meets at the same time. First off, all the field events, the most underappreciated track and field athletes, they would outright leave. These people are living worse than actual track athletes. Their events just aren't as marketable. So if you give a long jumper $75,000 for winning, and let's say he would only have a chance to come maybe 2nd or 3rd or 4th at the Olympics or the World Championships, he's more likely to come compete for you. Now, the superstars like Noah Lyles most likely wouldn't come to your World Championships, the Grand Slam World Championships, the first year, but a bunch of other people would. My guess is at least half. That is a major advantage. And as soon as Grand Slam would do this, World Athletics would respond. They would start paying their athletes right away. The reason they don't right now is because they're a monopoly. Just look at the effect that Grand Slam had on World Athletics just by being in their mind. I mean, Grand Slam was destined to fail, but the fact that they wanted to pay their athletes more for their meets made Diamond League pay their athletes more for winning, so they can compete more with the Grand Slam and have those athletes compete with World Athletics Diamond League instead. So imagine if Grand Slam was legit. Imagine instead of being destined for failure, they were destined to compete and maybe even overpass World Athletics World Championships. And Grand Slam doesn't have to stop there. If you think outside of the box, like the Enhanced Games did, I got a lot of flack for my Enhanced Games videos complimenting their success. They're gonna have another one next year. And I just think the fact that you have a bunch of amateur sports that was finally profitable and athletes are finally getting paid and the business is able to survive, I thought that was amazing for the sport. Let me give you another example of thinking outside of the box. If Michael Johnson had Grand Slam World Championships and then went to every single NCAA school or just went to the NCAA Division I board and said, we want to pile our qualifying meets on top of yours. So you have these NCAA meets throughout the year. There's dozens of them. If there's hundreds of them around the country. And you just add another 2 or 3 days to those meets. You make a deal with the NCAA and you charge each of these athletes $80 per entry, like the NCAA already does if you're a unattached athlete. I do this all the time, but you make this more accessible to the public. You say anybody can come and compete and we'll put you on our global ranking system. People will come. People want to compete. You can't get away from monetizing track and field athletes. As much as I wish it would be otherwise, we're not a professional sport yet, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If an athlete is paying $80 to enter a meet and they do well in the meet, maybe they get to rub shoulders with some of the superstars in the NCAA. If they're a slower runner, have a slower runner day the day before. You can monetize that. You can monetize the experience to go and compete at a track meet. And you can even have age group classification competitions. You'll have these 50-year-old lawyers with actual money coming and spending money at the track. I honestly think Grand Slam could have pulled it off. They just had to think just a little bit bigger and a little bit differently. But most importantly, the biggest layup missed by Grand Slam by not becoming World Championships was that the Olympics gives out a quadrennial dividend to World Athletics for having that selection process to send track and field athletes to the Olympics. Every 4 years, World Athletics gets around $39.7 million, or at least that's what the last quadrennial dividend payment was. Imagine being Grand Slam track and existing for 2 years as the World Championships. And now most of the world's best athletes are going to your meet. You can go to the Olympics and say, they're gonna do it for $39.7 million. Heck, we have a better supply of world-class athletes and we'll send them to you for $20 million. We'll have our own selection process. There's just so many things you could have done as being World Championships as Grand Slam, and it's so frustrating that they didn't go there. They chose the route they chose for some bizarre reason. Grand Slam could have been so much more. It was so disappointing that they didn't take off. And it's so disappointing they set our sport back in terms of business investment. They could have secured that last $18 million by Winners Alliance if they just did certain things a little bit differently and got more investment on top of that. They just had to have the best athletes in the world compete against each other, and people care about it. And the best way to do that is to say, I'm the World Championships, not these guys, and see how it plays out. You shoot for the moon, and if you fail, you would have failed anyways. If you like this video and you're more curious about what happened to the enhanced games, please click on the video right in the middle. I go through it all. I go through all the mishaps of Michael Johnson, all of the mistakes Grand Slam made, and that disastrous partnership between Winners Alliance and Michael Johnson, and how that partnership could have worked a little bit better. So come on, join me. I'll see you there.